Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. An out-of-date Dynamite review. There's going to be a review of last night's edition of Dynamite, which was the November 11th edition. This was the Fallout Dynamite from Full Gear. And I gotta say, Dynamite was a solid show last night, which I just finished watching it because I DVR'd Dynamite, so I just finished watching it. But overall, it was a solid show. We had Brian Cage versus Matt Sydal. We had the Natural Nightmares, QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes versus the Butcher and the Blade, which they fought in a Bunkhouse match. We saw Shawn Spears versus Scorpio Sky, Tay Conti versus Red Velvet, and the main event, we saw Penta Miedo versus Rey Fenix. This was a rematch with them. But overall, like I said, Dynamite was a solid show. So let's get started with the Dynamite review. So Dynamite kicked off last night with Team Taz coming out. Taz, Brian Cage, and Ricky Starks were out there. Taz ended up hyping up Brian Cage's match against Matt Sydal. Taz ended up saying that he got distracted by Darby Allin because Darby Allin was sitting up in the stands. Darby Allin, of course, the new TNT champion, which he won the title at Full Gear. So Taz ended up telling Darby Allin that the last time they saw him, he was knocked out on his car, which we, of course, saw at Full Gear. So Taz ended up telling Darby Allin that he better not come anywhere near the ring. So Taz then talked Darby Allin along with Cody. Taz continuing that, if he talks with Cody, to not let him know the same is coming for him. If he comes near them, if he comes near Brian Cage or Ricky Starks. So Taz ended up hyping up Brian Cage's match against Matt Sydal even more. He ended up saying that someone who was respected in locker rooms around the world. Taz then said that Brian Cage is no joke and that Sydal is no joke. So Matt Sydal ended up coming out, and we had the match. Brian Cage versus Matt Sydal. Very good match from both of these guys. Taz was on commentary here. He went over to the commentary table. Ricky Starks was at ringside. And the match started off with Matt Sydal delivering a kick to Brian Cage, which sent Brian Cage into the corner. Matt Sydal delivered a drop kick to Cage in the corner. Cage ended up getting right back up. And Sydal was then sent into the corner by Brian Cage. And Cage delivered a suplex, an over-release suplex to Matt Sydal, and delivered a hip toss into a backbreaker. Sydal was then sent into the corner again by Brian Cage. Sydal ends up fighting Brian Cage back, delivers another drop kick, but Cage ended up coming back and delivered a lariat to Sydal. And there was a point in the match where Sydal was on the other top, and he ended up nailing a Meteora to Brian Cage, which Brian Cage was on the stage. Sydal delivered that Meteora to Brian Cage on the stage, which looked really awesome. So they went back to the ring. Sydal was delivering kicks to Brian Cage and a spinning neck breaker. Sydal went for the cover. Brian Cage ended up kicking out at 2. There was a point in the match where Sydal was on the top. He was looking to go for a senton to Brian Cage, but Sydal ended up jumping off the top Brian Cage ended up catching Sydal in midair. And that's when Brian Cage then ended up hitting the drill claw to Sydal. So there you go. Brian Cage ended up winning the match. But overall, very good match from both of these guys. Really enjoyed it. Post-match, Ricky Starks ended up getting on the mic. Starks ended up saying that both he and Brian Cage are officially ranked and that he wants the TNT Championship. Starks ended up saying that anyone who gets in their way is getting put down. So that was that. And then we had Cody Rhodes come out. Cody Rhodes then headed to the ring. Cody congratulated Darby Allin on his win that we saw at Full Gear on Saturday, where he ended up defeating Cody for the TNT Championship. So Cody then ended up bringing up MJF. So we had this woman come down. So Cody ended up asking if he can help her. So this woman ends up taking the mic and says, Can you help me? So this woman ends up introducing herself. And her name is Jade Cargill. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. And she says that she's the total package. She ends up saying that she's been standing at ringside week after week, studying her competition, and even Cody himself. So Jade ended up saying that Cody calls himself a giant killer. And she ended up saying, but what does Cody know about that? She ended up saying there's nothing giant about him. So Jade ended up saying that she knows a giant, and that Cody's words just might wake him. She ended up going on to say that the next time Cody says something like that, she ended up saying, keep that shit to yourself. So she then headed up the ramp and to the stage, and she ends up congratsing him on getting his last name back. And she ended up saying, but he didn't have the balls to go by one name. She ended up saying that the giant has one name, and he's a real star. So Jade ended up mentioning who this giant is, and it is Shaq, Shaquille O'Neal. So we're going to be seeing Shaq on Dynamite TV soon. Of course, they got to get Shaq because he is part of the NBA on TNT. I just read an article today about how Shaq and WWE, like they were in a tussle, both Shaq and WWE. If I could get the article up here, so, if I could find it here. I just read about this today. And of course, this is coming from Ringside News. Yeah, but, Ringside News. Sometimes we can't trust them because they're always doing sometimes clickbait articles. Well, it says right here, WWE nixed Shaq match because they said he was always out of shape. So Dave Meltzer ended up talking about Shaq's history in pro wrestling. Of course, he was down to have a match against the Big Show, but that didn't go forward. So Dave Meltzer ended up saying both sides blame the other when it comes to Shaq and WWE. WWE always said that like he would talk like he wanted to do it, but he never agreed to do it. Meltzer ended up going on to say WWE also said that he wouldn't train and that it was always out of shape. Of course, they're talking about Shaq here. So Meltzer said Shaq also said that they promised him, that WWE promised him an amount of money, but they never put it down. So he never got the offer that they said. So that was all what Meltzer was saying. It says right here that WWE and Shaq weren't able to work anything out, but AEW obviously has plans. So that was the article there. So let's see what kind of plans that AEW has for Shaq. But I'm like, really? Shaq? Do we really need Shaq in AEW? So we had Brandy Rhodes come out. Brandy Rhodes ended up telling Jade, "Who the hell told you tonight was open night, bitch?" Because Brandy didn't appreciate what Jade had to say to her man, to Cody. So Brandy ended up telling Jade to never talk to Cody like that again. Brandy ends up telling Jade to bounce and don't come back unless she sends for her. So Brandy was like, "Bitch, get your ass out of here." So then Brandy went to walk to the back, and then Jade ended up giving Brandy a pat on her backside, and Brandy didn't like that. So we had one of the officials come out and kept Brandy and Jade separated, which I know this is going to probably lead to a match between Brandy and Jade. So Cody was looking on at what was going on. Brian Cage gets into the ring. Brian Cage ends up delivering a powerbomb to Cody. Ricky Starks end up coming out to the ring. Darby Allin then end up coming down to the ring from the stands. Darby Allin was wearing a jacket that was with thumbtacks on it. There was thumbtacks on his jacket, so he ended up using the thumbtack jacket on Ricky Starks. So Cody ended up beating up Brian Cage. Darby Allin then ended up delivering a splash in the corner on Brian Cage, and Brian Cage had some thumbtacks, on him from Darby Allin's thumbtack jacket. And that was that. But overall, this was a decent segment here, but it got good. Got really good when Brandy came out, and she ended up shutting up Jade here. And I love the thumbtack jacket from that Darby Allin was wearing. But overall, it was a decent segment. Then we saw Alex Marvez backstage. Marvez was talking to Jon Moxley about Kenny Omega being next in line for him to face, with the AEW World Championship on the line. Moxley ends up telling Alex Marvez that there's a big challenge ahead for him. Moxley ends up saying that he's danced with Omega before. And, of course, he won. Of course, Moxley won. Moxley ended up saying, beating Omega again, it'll take something special. But he's special. And he's at the top of the wrestling world. He said, so if anyone can do it, he can. Moxley ended up saying that one day, someone will shut his lights off. And he ended up telling Omega, good luck. So, good promo here from Moxley here. Moxley there. So then it was announced that on the December 2nd edition of Dynamite, we're going to be seeing Moxley versus Omega. So looking forward to that. Going to be one hell of a match between them. Even though we saw them fight last year. But that's going to be a good match, of course. And then we had the Bunkhouse match, the Natural Nightmares, QT Marshall, and Dustin Rhodes versus the Butcher and the Blade, of course, along with Allie the Bunny. And this was the best match of the night. This was easily the best match of the night. Now, the way this Bunkhouse match worked was the winner is only one, with pinfall or submission. And the match had no time limit at all. So the match started off with QT Marshall coming out. He leapt over the top rope and he got things going. And, the two teams end up battling. The Butcher ends up bringing out a gold chair. So the Butcher ended up looking to go for a pile driver. Dustin ended up lifting the Butcher, drops him down on the gold chair. And we saw a point in the match where the Blade ended up smashing a guitar over QT Marshall's head, which then made Marshall bleed. Dustin then ended up bringing out a cowbell. And it was just back and forth between these guys. We had the Bunny, Allie. She was trying to handcuff Dustin to the turnbuckle. And she was but the Bunny was helping beat up QT Marshall. QT Marshall was getting a haystack thrown on him. We had a ladder being brought into the ring. And Dustin was able to break away from the handcuffs. He ended up dropping both the Butcher and the Blade. So Dustin ends up grabbing the chair. He jams it into both the Butcher and the Blade. The Butcher ends up swinging the chair at the ladder. So we had Dustin ends up hitting the Butcher with a kendo stick. QT Marshall ended up spraying the Butcher with a fire extinguisher that we saw. And what was really cool was after QT Marshall ended up spraying the Butcher with the fire extinguisher, Dustin was on the stage with the Butcher. Dustin ends up delivering a bulldog through the plywood boards to the Butcher, which looked really awesome. So the Blade was bleeding from his forehead, so we had the Blade and QT Marshall bleeding like crazy. We saw QT Marshall end up dropping the Blade with a trash can lid. And Marshall ended up setting up the ladder. He ended up climbing up the ladder, gets to the top. He then jumps off and delivers a elbow drop to the Blade. So Marshall went for the pin. The Blade ended up kicking out. And at the end of the match, you had the Natural Nightmares, QT Marshall, and Dustin win the match, where we had the Butcher and the Blade do a neckbreaker powerbomb combo through the chairs on Dustin. And then QT ended up saving the match. And Dustin then ended up hitting the Blade with the cowbell. And then then QT ended up hitting the diamond cutter to the Blade. And that was that. So Natural Nightmares end up winning the match. But overall, this was the best match of the night. Really enjoyed this Bunkhouse match. Just great wrestling here. Very bloody. It was just highly entertaining. Very good match. So then we had MJF and Wardlow. This was their induction into the Inner Circle. Chris Jericho ended up coming out, to talk about bringing MJF into the Inner Circle. Jericho ended up saying before that, he's got to bring out the of course, his members of the Inner Circle, which, of course, Jake Hager, Santana, and Ortiz. But Sammy Guevara did not come out there. Jericho ended up asking Hager, Santana, and Ortiz, where's Sammy? he ended up saying that he knows Sammy is out of the hospital, but the show must go on. So then Jericho ends up introducing MJF and Wardlow. They both end up coming out. MJF ended up starting up that he's been in the industry for 5 long years, and that he was given from his dad $1 million so he could make it work. MJF ended up going on to say that he had a lot of pressure that nobody would understand, and that's credited the diamond that he is today. So MJF then looked like he wanted to do a poem that he thinks Santana and Ortiz will enjoy. So he ends up doing lyrics from All of Me, sung by Drake. And Ortiz ended up calling MJF out. Ortiz ended up saying to Jericho that MJF shouldn't be in the Inner Circle. And Jericho says it's on him. He made the stipulation. MJF made the stipulation. And he beat him. Jericho ended up saying that with these additions, it will make the stable even stronger. He ends up telling Ortiz that he will make it work. He ended up saying, I don't even know who Drake is, Ortiz. He ended up saying, I started from the bottom. Now I'm here. MJF then ends up saying that they are not here just for the induction. They are here because it was Chris Jericho's birthday. Jericho just turned 50. So happy 50th birthday to Jericho. So we saw balloons and confetti came down. MJF ended up saying that everybody is going to Las Vegas next week. And that's all on him. So MJF ended up singing happy birthday to Jericho. He let everybody else also sing. So the Inner Circle, along with MJF and Wardlow, they're going to be going to Las Vegas next week. And we're going to see that on Dynamite next week. But it was an enjoyable segment here. So, but Sammy Guevara not being there, you could tell that Guevara is not too happy with MJF and Wardlow in the Inner Circle. Hell, I even read an article saying that AEW is setting it up for Guevara to turn babyface. So with MJF and Wardlow now in the Inner Circle, I think Guevara is going to break away from the Inner Circle and he's going to be a singles competitor. He's going to be a singles guy. So, but overall, like I said, this segment with MJF and Wardlow's induction into the Inner Circle, really enjoyable segment. So then we saw Alex Marvez. He was looking to talk with the Young Bucks backstage. He ended up asking the Young Bucks what's next for them. So Nick ended up saying that it's the biggest accomplishment of him and Matt's careers. But he thinks the fans will want to see a rematch. So Matt Jackson ended up apologizing for kicking Marvez. And he ended up saying that they are looking for fresh opponents. So Matt Jackson then ended up mentioning Top Flight, which Top Flight is a young up-and-coming tag team. They end up competing on AEW Dark, which, I don't watch AEW Dark. So, but Matt Jackson ended up continuing that next week on Dynamite. It will be Top Flight versus the Young Bucks. So the match, they said that the match was originally scheduled for last night, but of course due to Matt's injury, Matt couldn't compete because he wasn't cleared by the doctors. So we're going to be getting that match next week on Dynamite. Top Flight versus the Young Bucks. We'll like to see how this tag team is, Top Flight. Like I said, I heard they competed on AEW Dark, but haven't seen, what they're, how, good they are in the ring. So, gonna get to see it next week. Then we had Shawn Spears versus Scorpio Sky, which match was solid. We had the match start off with Scorpio Sky delivering a cross chop to Spears' throat. But Spears ended up throwing Scorpio Sky into the corner, was delivering some chops to him. We had Spears and Scorpio Sky battle out at ringside. Scorpio Sky then ended up biting Shawn Spears. They went back to the ring. Scorpio Sky went up to the top, and Spears ended up throwing him. And we went back and forth here between them. There was a point where Tully Blanchard ends up getting in the referee's face. Spears then end up blowing up his glove because Tully ended up putting something in Shawn Spears' glove. So Tully Blanchard ended up throwing another at Sky. It was like I think it was called like a dolly or something. It was said on commentary though, but I don't know, it looked like a blade. It looked like a blade there. But Tully ended up throwing it at Scorpio Sky. Scorpio Sky ended up tossing it into the crowd. And as soon as Scorpio Sky ended up turning around, Shawn Spears ended up laying out Scorpio Sky. And there you go. Shawn Spears ended up winning the match. Post-match, we had Shawn Spears ends up putting the thing that Tully Blanchard put in his glove. And the referee was asking to check, the glove. And that was that. But overall, solid match. So then we went backstage. Dasha was attempted to talk with Kenny Omega. And they ended up saying that she couldn't get a reason why Kenny Omega left the interview. Because he ran off. Because Kenny Omega ended up running off. And then Alex Marvez then caught up with Omega. Marvez then ended up bringing up the match, now official with Moxley for the AEW World Championship, which we're going to see on December 2nd. So we had Kenny Omega telling Alex Marvez that, now he has to step out of his position of being an afterthought to now being in the spotlight. Omega ended up saying that Moxley has what he wants and has taken Omega's spot as being the face of AEW. Omega ended up saying he's heard the backstage chatter of, where's the cleaner? So Omega ends up saying that he thinks he's proven with the recent tournament that he never left and that he's just ready to resume that role in AEW. Omega ended up saying that they are actually 0-0, 0-0, because when he looks in the record book, there's no match between them. Well, you can tell that there was a match. Their first match, of course, was that unsanctioned match, which, in my opinion, was one of the greatest matches in the company. Just that match was just awesome from beginning to end. I know a lot of people had problems with that match, but go back and watch that match. That match was fucking awesome from beginning to end. It was absolutely crazy. But it was a good interview with Kenny Omega there. And then you had Tay Conti versus Red Velvet. Tay Conti was out there along Anna Jay. Red Velvet was out there with Brandy Rhodes. Okay women's match here. You had, as the match started, Red Velvet and Tay Conti ended up bickering back and forth. Red Velvet tried to get a pin on Tay Conti, but Conti ended up kicking out at 1. Red Velvet then delivered a leg lariat into a standing moonsault on Tay Conti, but Conti ended up kicking out at 1. At the end of the match, Tay Conti was in control. She delivered a pump kick to Red Velvet's face and a knee also into Red Velvet's face and went for the cover. There you go. Tay Conti ended up winning the match. Post-match, Anna Jay wasn't too happy with Tay Conti that, she got the win. Tay Conti ended up looking for a hug. And the Dark Order was looking on from the tunnel, on the stage, and that was that. But okay, women's match. So he went backstage. Alex Marvez was with the Inner Circle. Alex Marvez was asking the Inner Circle about, how they're going to Las Vegas. And then Sammy Guevara ends up showing up. And Guevara ended up saying that he got MJF's email saying to go to the beach. MJF ended up saying no, and that he said to be here in his second email. So MJF ended up asking the other guys if they got the second email. And they all did. They all got the second email. So MJF ends up telling Guevara he really did send two. So MJF ends up giving the ticket for Vegas to Sammy Guevara. So, and that was that. So then the commentary guys, Tony Schiavone, JR, and Excalibur end up announcing the matches that we're going to see next week on Dynamite. So the matches we're getting next week is Orange Cassidy versus Kip Sabian. It's going to be the Young Bucks versus Top Flight. And it's going to be Cody and Darby Allin. Cody and Darby Allin are going to be teamed up to take on Team Taz, Brian Cage, and Ricky Starks. So, and then you have, of course, the Inner Circle going to Las Vegas. So all that we're going to see next week on Dynamite. And then Eddie Kingston ended up coming out. Eddie Kingston came out to talk about having to say, "I quit" at Full Gear in his match with Moxley, which was a good match. It was a good main event at Full Gear. Moxley at the end of the match choking Kingston with that ripped barbed wire. That was pretty crazy to see. Kingston ended up saying, unlike most of the fans who would quit and stop wrestling, Kingston ended up saying that he will never stop and will eventually become the AEW World Champion. So then we had the main event. Penta El Zero Miedo versus Rey Fenix. The rematch. And this was a really good match between these guys. It was back and forth between them. The match started off with a quick pace. Penta and Fenix were throwing kicks to each other. Fenix ended up looking to go for a pin. Penta ended up kicking out of two. And Penta tried to go for, a pin of his own. And Fenix ended up kicking out at two. It was back and forth. Penta ended up doing a reverse Texas Cloverleaf to Fenix. And then Penta was shown tearing away at Fenix's mask. And during this match, Eddie Kingston was on commentary. So we had Kingston end up saying that, there could be more problems between Penta and Fenix. And the highlight of the match was we had Penta hitting a super kick and then a package pile driver, which was awesome. The referee was then checking on Fenix on the floor. And Penta ended up delivering the package pile driver to Fenix on the ring apron, which was crazy. So then Penta ended up leaping off of the ring apron and hits a Yoshitonic on the floor. to Fenix, which was cool. Penta then sent Fenix back into the ring, and Penta ended up hitting another package pile driver to Fenix. And then he went for the cover. There you go. Penta, LZO, Miedo end up winning the match. Post-match, Eddie Kingston ended up getting on the mic. Eddie Kingston ended up making fun of the Fight Forever and the This Is Awesome chants from, that the crowd usually do at wrestling shows. So he ended up making fun of that. Kingston ended up saying that Penta showed his brother who's boss. Kingston ended up telling Penta that he's the best. And Kingston ended up kicking Fenix out to the floor. Kingston then ended up saying that he's proud of Penta. And that he tells Penta that he doesn't need dead weight like Fenix. And so out came PAC. PAC ended up returning. PAC is back. Good to see PAC back. So PAC hasn't been on TV on AEW Dynamite since March. Since before the pandemic started. So PAC was pissed when he came out, and he got on the mic, and PAC ended up telling Kingston, "You think I'd been gone forever, and that you made a very big mistake." So PAC ended up running into the ring. Referees and officials ended up getting behind Kingston and PAC, and they were trying to go at it with each other, but the referees and officials ended up backing them off. And commentary ended up saying that Tony Khan, they got word from Tony Khan that next week on Dynamite, PAC will return to in-ring action, and he will be facing the Blade next week on Dynamite. So that was that. That was how Dynamite ended. So, but very good match between Penta and Fenix. The package pile driver that Penta delivered to Fenix on the ring apron was brutal. But overall, very good main event. And overall, solid Dynamite last night. But anyways, that's it for the Dynamite review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. And definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. And I will see you all tomorrow night, of course, with the SmackDown review. So until then, see you all tomorrow night.